for New Orleans to be an extremely focused team coming out this week. They know that if they take care of business, that it doesn't matter what the Rams do, or it doesn't matter what the Carolina Atlanta outcome is. They realize, these young players seem to listen well to the veteran leadership on this team, and they realize that if they win this game, they're going to get a home playoff game, and everybody wants to be home for that for those playoff games, especially that first one. Tampa Bay, you look at them during the regular season, and there's no denying that they still have some good talent on the roster, especially at the skill positions, but they've been immature. We saw it in the first game against New Orleans. They unraveled. The game was close through the first quarter, but then
recording off. This call is being recorded.
Sorry about that. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. Tampa sort of lost their composure. New Orleans likes to put pressure on its opponents, both offensively and defensively, and Tampa just couldn't keep up. The Buccaneers' running game is not going to be much of a factor in this. So that amps up, that increases the pressure on Jameis Winston in the passing game. And Winston has showed throughout his short career that he can be rattled. And again, we saw it in the first half of this first matchup. The Saints got to him. They got to him early, and although Winston didn't play in the second half, their passing offense was nearly non-existent. And the question has to be asked of this team. Tampa Bay, that is, they've shown a lot of maturity issues all season long. Now that they have nothing to play for, when they play against an opponent that likes to pressure them on both sides of the ball, how responsive are they going to be? I don't think very responsive at all. And even though the game is in Raymond James Stadium in Tampa Bay's backyard, I think New Orleans they have a more talented roster. They're focused on what their prize is, which is a division title and a home playoff match. And I see this game being somewhere in the neighborhood of 31-10 in favor of the Saints.
Wow. Yeah, that would be excellent for us to be able to put some pressure on these guys. But you know what I want to see from the Saints? I need to see some consistency on offense there, Bob. The thing that's scaring me is our third down efficiency, or lack of third down efficiency.
Yeah, there's no efficiency there.
So, yeah, man, we've got to do something with this. I thought Sean Payton got away a little bit from doing what we need to do with the run as much. I'd like to see some old school sweeps, man. Some old Vince Lombardi sweeps from time to time. You have the horses to be able to do it. Let's try to get those guys out there on the perimeter and have some of those guards pulling and knocking some of those cornerbacks and defensive backs and linebackers on their butts. I know this is an important game, and I believe the Saints can win the game. I don't think there's going to be any mental lapses there. I just need to see this team offensively, because throughout the year we have not put together a great all-in-all game offensively, man, where you can say, man, the offense was clicking on all cylinders, So can we do that this game? Going into the playoffs is going to be my tail sign of how well we're going to perform in the playoffs, because we can't go below 30% in the playoffs if we expect to have an extended run. Not against the talented defenses that are out there with the likes of the Rams, as well as the Eagles have a pretty solid defense as well. And, of course, we know the Panthers and Falcons. All righty. So those are just my thoughts, Bob. Any last thoughts or any last commentary about the team that the Who Dat Nation needs to be aware of?
You did hit it on a couple of concerning points, and we've talked about it multiple times here on the show. Where if there's anything to be concerned about heading into the playoffs, other than the injuries, is that New Orleans has not been nearly as efficient offensively as what we've seen in years past, particularly on third downs. I think at this point, the coaching staff realizes what they have and realizes that this offense needs to go through Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram, and Michael Thomas. And there's not too many defenses that can keep pace with that, especially if the New Orleans line continues to play as well as they have, both in run blocking and pass protection. So we may not see the Saints spread the ball around as often or as much as we've seen Breeze and Peyton like to do to their targets in the past. We might see a different Saints team during this playoff stretch. In that, these are our main weapons. Nobody else can really compare outside of Teddy Ginn. We got to give Mr. Ginn credit for playing pretty well too, and that's who they're going to ride with. I'm not going to say that the Saints will be conservative, not by any stretch. But they're not going to. They're going to take calculated risks as opposed to being maybe the riverboat gambler style. Sean Payton has been incredible on his fourth down decisions this year about not only the play calling and the execution, but when to take those risks too. And I think that's mainly because he finally has confidence in his defensive unit. So we might. You mentioned the power sweep. We might see some things out of the Saints offensively this Sunday to see what kind of new wrinkles that they might be able to add. Not necessarily to win the game against the Bucs, but maybe to put on film for those potential playoff opponents. That maybe we have to worry about this after all, or maybe we have to worry about that. So I expect to see some trick plays out of them just to throw something new up there on the film. Other than that, we know what weapons we're going to get offensively from New Orleans. We know how good they are. We just got to hope and keep our fingers crossed that they keep performing at such a high level and that the defense stays aggressive and makes the plays like we've seen from them all season long.
True enough, man. Bob, I'm going to say this, man. Our special teams looks like we have a pretty good unit. Will Lutz is performing very well right now, as well as Morstead as usual, But Tommy Lee has really done a very, very admirable job. I have to give up kudos for him. I feel like he's on the verge, man. He may break something, So let's see how Tommy Lee continues to perform going into the playoffs, and let's see how that special team unit can really make an impact on a game or two. Could this be one of the games where we can put some notice on the rest of the NFL on pay attention to what Tommy Lee or some of the guys in the unit can do, especially. We saw how well Alvin Kamara was able to handle those kickoff returns. So that's why special teams, as Coach Rick Gailey would always say, must be special. All right, guys. Let's continue to pray for Kenny Vaccaro and those guys. AJ Klein, those guys are healing on IR. Kenny Vaccaro just underwent surgery on Tuesday to fix his core muscle in the groin injury. That's not good. But, Kenny, and I have to ask this question, Bob. Is this the end of us seeing Kenny in the black and gold?
Yeah, I think it is. I think we've seen the last of Kenny Vaccaro in a New Orleans uniform. And I don't think it's because of any disharmony between he and the team or he and the coaching staff. I just think it comes down to finances. He is. I expect him to command a high number on the market.
Really?
When he hits free agency. Yeah, I do. I do. Teams want athletic playmakers at safety, and he has shown, although he's been inconsistent, he's shown the ability to do that. critics of him, and I've been rather critical of Kenny during his career, especially after his rookie year. He can be somewhat of a liability in coverage, but he has the athletic ability to match up with most receivers. He plays extremely well in the box. He's still a young guy. So I fully expect him to command a high number on the market, and I don't think that the Saints will match it. I think that that's big at other free agent safety possibilities. I haven't delved too deeply into the potential free agent list. But yeah, I think I don't think Vaccaro will not be a Saint because of any kind of disharmony between he and the coaches. Like you've heard some mumblings about that. I don't think that that's the case. I just think it comes down to a business decision. In addition to his body is sort of breaking down. We've seen Kenny have some issues with injuries, nagging injuries that have caught up with him late in the season. Now the last few years, and they're soft tissue injuries. Which can carry an impact as a player moves into his veteran years. Continued soft tissue injuries will slow a guy down really quick. So I just think that they're going to factor all that in and let Vaccaro move. If they can get him at a discounted rate, maybe we see him back. But I don't think that that'll happen.
Yeah. Well, either way, I just don't like to see guys in a career on IR. It's just kind of tough to see that from Kenny. All right, man, good stuff this evening, Bob. How can the people follow you on social media?
My work can be followed. I work for the Canal Street Chronicles. Great editor, John Hendricks, and we have a number of great writers. Mr. Deuce Wyndham, as you mentioned, John Sigler wrote a great piece on the Philadelphia Eagles about 2 weeks back. So look that one up for a laugh. But yeah, my work could be followed on the Canal Street Chronicles site, which is on Facebook, and on Twitter at Saints CSC. My own personal Twitter handle is Bobby R 2613, and I post my articles and views about the NFL and Saints football on there. And I can be followed on Facebook as well, Bob Rose, and I work very closely with Saints News Network. And thank you, Kyle, and thank you, Barry Hurstis, if you're listening, for including me and your family. It's always an honor and a pleasure to work with you guys also.
Well, the honor is ours. Thank you for being with us this entire season. You can't get rid of us. I just want to let you know that. Not you part of the family.
Right back at you.
Today is my birthday, guys. So happy birthday to me. And, 51 years. God, thank you very much for allowing me to be here. I've seen many games from New Orleans Saints. I've been through those lean years like you talked about earlier, Bob. I was in the Dome when we were 0 and didn't look like we were going to win a game that year. But I was still there with my dad rooting the team on. My mom used to say, you guys are a glutton for punishments. So I don't think we're going to be a glutton this season. Now, do the Saints have some challenges? Who Dat Nation? Yes, we do have some challenges through the injuries that we have been facing, as well as some of the inconsistency on offense. But we have a young, talented squad, and it gives hope for the future, not only in 2018, 19, and beyond, but it gives hope that we will expect and we will continue to put a solid product on the field for the Who Dat Nation. I think Sean Payton over these past several years has learned that you must modify and be able to modify and be willing to modify your game plan. It can't be consistently the same old, same old, same old. So it's good to see what has happened. And Jeff Ireland as well as Mickey Loomis, those guys did a very solid job drafting the likes of Alvin Kamara, Ramczyk, Lattimore, Azalone. You know, think about it. That kid was starting for us as well. And I know I'm forgetting some other guy. Who else has made an impact at rookie for us this season, Bob?
Oh gosh, Marcus Williams has played well.
Yes,
we've seen Trey Edmonds step in as a backup running back and has some big plays. And you mentioned Anzalone. Trey Hendrickson has had some nice moments at defensive end before he got hurt about a month ago. This draft class is one of, if not the best in franchise history.
The only one that hasn't been able to make an impact and he hasn't been consistently out there on the field is Muhammad. Maybe Muhammad, I've been pulling for you all season, and I remember seeing you a couple weeks ago. You hadn't really made that push that's necessary when he was in the lineup against the Jets. But could it be that we have somebody as talented as we need at defensive end to complement Cam Jordan, not only with George Johnson and the return of Edibali? All right, guys, Saints fans, let's root for our boys in black and gold on Sunday, and let's see how the Saints are able to bring back to New Orleans the National Football Conference South Division crown. This is Kyle T of Saints News. You can check us out at www.saintsnews.net, and you can follow Barry Hurstis at www.saintsnewsnetwork.com. This is Kyle T. Mosley with Bob Rose of the Canal Street Chronicles. Thank you this evening. You guys have a great and fantastic and safe 2018. We'll be back next Wednesday night to be able to recap what went on and to preview what will happen in the playoffs with the New Orleans Saints. Take care, and who dat, baby? Bye,
yeah.
Bob.